Has started.
Good evening and welcome to the January 19th meeting of the Joint Committees of the Fairfield Representative Town Meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, our first report today will be from Attorney Baldwin on the lease report, item 3 on our agenda.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. Good evening, everybody. Jim Baldwin, Town Attorney, with the lease report that I trust you all have in front of you. I'm happy to go over any specific questions you might have. I will first of all say that several of these leases have expired, and due to COVID and other reasons, they are being negotiated, but at the time, if they're not seasonal, they're being paid on a month-to-month basis. The first select woman did not charge full price for several of the leases here for a period of 3 months. She waived their monthly fees due to COVID, and some of those, such as Centro and the Chelsea, are we're beginning discussions and waiting to see how things unfold with the upcoming spring and summer seasons. One other change is the 85 Mill Pond Road lease was extended for another 3 years under similar terms as those that are in front of you, with the first year being the same, and then a 2% increase for the next 2 years. I think if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Madam Moderator, Representative Iacono.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Moderator, to the Town Attorney. Mr. Baldwin, could you explain what 70 Sanford Street, the All-American Waste lease, what that is for $1? That seems to have ended. Maybe it's being renegotiated. I don't know, but I wasn't sure what that was. Yeah,
that I just heard from their attorney finally today. That is for a dumpster lease, which is adjacent to the Fairfield Theater Company. And
okay.
It's part of the terms that we have, I believe, with the FTC, that we would provide that dumpster space, and that's the purpose of the $1 lease.
Got it. Thank you. I have a few others if I could just run through them, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'm glad to hear about the waiving of the fees for some of the restaurants, given all that's going on with COVID and doing everything we can to keep our downtown alive. So you thank the first select woman for all of her work in that regard. It did stand out to me as you're now renegotiating those that the sidewalk rates for some of the restaurants vary. And I was just offering that maybe we could give consideration to figuring out a flat rate for negotiating sidewalk space. I don't know that one restaurant should be paying a certain dollar amount and another one should be paying a different dollar amount. I'm not aware of like Class A sidewalk space, for lack of a better way to say it. I don't know if you have any feedback there, or if that goes to negotiations. You can't comment on it, but that did catch my eye.
I would say it does go to negotiations, and there may be certain values attributable to the location and the nature, whether it's a sidewalk or a patio adjacent to a park and that sort of thing. But I didn't negotiate these, but I will certainly be part of those ongoing negotiations, and we'll give consideration to, I guess, there being some form of equity or fairness to all our restaurants. But if there's a rational basis for it, then we'll negotiate rationally.
Excellent, thank you. My other questions, 1740 Post Road, Inwood Equity, Fairfield LLC, 10 parking spots. Which spots are those? Is that that's separate from what we did with community theater, right? Or is that?
Yeah, it's my understanding that that's over on Carter Henry Drive, over by Heritage Square.
All right, so related to that office building.
Yes.
Okay. And then my last question was related to actually the Pond Mill LLC right away that you mentioned. Where is that exactly? What is that?
That's over by the local, over by the Recplex area where we have the solar panels.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
You're welcome.
Representative Vergara.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Hi, Mr. Baldwin. I also wanted to comment, like Representative Iacono, that I was happy that the fees were waived for our restaurants and businesses wanting to use the sidewalks and patios this spring. I think it was a very important move. And so I was going to ask about that because I was surprised that there was any revenue generated from rent for the sidewalks or patios. I wanted to make sure that that would be extended into this spring as well and summer, because I think it's going to be equally important to make use of the outdoor spaces. Is the First Select Woman contemplating waiving those fees again?
Certainly, that's under consideration, and I'll remind everyone here that there was also a expedited permitting process to allow restaurants in town to expand into their own parking lots. It took a matter of 2 days for that permitting process, and there was a very aggressive policy in support of our restaurants in town, and I'm certain that that policy will continue.
Yeah, that was a really important move, and I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you. Were all of the businesses in downtown notified somehow that they would have increased access to the outdoor spaces? How was that advertised to them?
I believe that our Economic Development Director, Mark Barnhart, took the lead in that, together with members of the TPZ and the zoning department in general. So it was a team effort, but I think that Mark led the effort along with the First Select Woman.
Okay, great. Just as long as all of the businesses know about that opportunity. I also had a question about some of the expiring leases. We spoke briefly on the phone about the Pilot House lease, and I saw that that's expiring. Have you looked into any of the questions I raised about the failure to pay the utility fees and the shared responsibility with Sullivan McKinney?
Yes, I have.
So what's the status of that situation?
The status is that that lease is expiring this coming year, and that it is subject to further discussion. I don't think that it's appropriate to take it any further, with all due respect.
Okay. I would like to state that I think I didn't see Sullivan McKinney on this lease list. Is there a reason for that? Don't they lease the space as well, or do they own it?
I'm not certain, but I think that they also lease. I think that's correct. But I'm not sure if that's, well, I'm not certain of the answer to that. But I know that they share space, obviously.
I didn't see them listed on this lease list, because they do share that space with Pilot House, and there's that arrangement with the utility fees.
Yeah, I have to give credit to Connie Saxel, who put together this list, and I worked on it with her, fine-tuning it, and I'm sure that Connie we'll be able to address that. But I'll look into it and I can get back to you on the specifics. And I know, Jill, that we'll probably be talking again about the future of that building and who's there and terms in the coming year.
Okay. I really do think it's a good opportunity for the town to expand its affordable housing unit. So it does sound like Sullivan McKinney has a good opportunity to get a low rate mortgage, and it would be fantastic for the town to increase its affordable housing. The neighbors like it. Seems like a really good opportunity for everybody. I also had a question about some of the other expiring leases. There was another one that looks great. It's the farm with 10 acres of farmland, Greenfield Farms, which is fantastic that we've maintained farmland. I know it's a big part of our historical, our history, and I'm glad that we made an effort to protect it and have that space, because I think for a while it was one of our only remaining farms. Now we have another one. I think the Charneys created a farm a few years ago. But I looked it up and I saw that it was permanently closed. What's the use right now for that land?
All I know is what's in the lease, and then it's supposed to be used for farmland. I don't know if they're actually farming the land at this time.
Okay. I did see the lease expired in 2019. It is a low monetary value for the lease. It's $1, which I understand because we want to encourage farming. But I do know others in that area in Greenfield Hill who were interested in having sort of an organic community farm. And it'd be an interesting idea if it's not being utilized right now as a farm. I know that there are several Greenfield Hill organizations interested in maybe starting up a community farm there.
I think that's an excellent suggestion and one that we'll look into. This was not on my radar, so to speak, but it seems to be an opportunity to revisit that property, its use, and possibilities, as you just described, certainly with the idea of keeping it as a farm or gardening.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7, through you to Attorney Baldwin. I just had a question about the H. Smith Richardson concession. We do have a new restaurateur here moving in there, from what I understand. And that rent, the base rent prior to this reconstruction there was approximately $36,000 a year, I believe. Is that correct? So we've increased approximately $24,000.
Yeah, that sounds correct. I don't have that right in front of me, but that sounds correct. Yes, it's a brand new facility as well, with better possibilities.
Exactly. Is this a year-to-year lease?
No, I believe that this is it's a 5-year lease.
5-year lease. And when do we expect them to be up and running?
I believe that the fit up is happening as we speak, and as soon as they're ready, I think that they're allowed to open their doors. But I don't know about the permitting process for all that at this time. But certainly the goal is to have it up and running in time for the golf season.
From what I understand, it's going to be March, hopefully. So that would be fantastic.
That sounds about right.
And the neighborhood. Okay. Question about the parking authority leases. I'm assuming that this will have to be finalized prior to the new parking permits coming out for the next year, because I'm assuming that these leases are going to go up. So it's going to cost people more to park at the train stations.
So again, that's a matter which is under discussion, but I'm not so sure that there's a direct correlation between the two. The parking authority, as I understand it, although I don't know the details, has a large amount of capital at its disposal. But we're currently in negotiations, so I can't speak for the parking authority and what they're going to do with the permits.
Okay. And could you just help me and maybe everybody else know the Southport train station parking lot, is that not under the parking authority, or did I miss it on here? I don't think I did, but
that may be, I don't see it on here either. It may be state-owned or something along those lines, or the railroad, but I'm afraid I don't have an answer for you, but I'd be happy to get one.
okay. Thank you, Attorney Baldwin.
You're welcome.
Representative Georgiadis. Drew Georgiadis, District 9, through you, Madam Moderator, to Attorney Baldwin, following up on Representative regarding the farm. My understanding was that the town had entered into this arrangement in part because of the farm stand that the farm would also run, and that the citizens of the town of Fairfield would benefit from the farm in that way. And I drive by there often, and I just like to confirm the farm stand has been closed for at least 2 years. So I look forward to the follow-up and support more active use of this farm. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Attorney Baldwin? Looks like there are not. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Karen.
We're all set. Right.
Great. Have a good evening. Thank you.
You too. Next on our list is the Blight report from Fire Marshal Higgins.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. Thank you. Members of the Board of RTM, thank you as well. The 2020 summary for Blight and condemnation, I believe, was also presented to all members. Blight was basically formed back in September of 2004. Currently consists of the current health director, Sans Cleary, myself, and chief building official. Last year, we inspected 42 complaints, which 29 were determined to be blight. From there, in front of you, I would take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Vergara, and then Mark. And
Hi,
Veronica.
thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
So I didn't see very many lots, like business lots, listed on here that I know exist around town. Is there a reason for that? Do we not track those vacant lots? Are those not counted as blight?
We follow basically a complaint system. If someone believes that the property in town, whether residential or commercial, falls underneath the definitions of blight, they are to fill out a complaint. Every complaint that we receive, one of the three of us, if not two of the three of us, will go out within the 30-day complaint and conduct an investigation. So if we didn't receive a complaint, then most likely we never, made the complaint ourselves.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? Yes.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
And I've seen the blight form too, so I understand what's contained in that.
Hi.
We received, I think RTM leadership received a constituent complaint.
How are you?
Early in the year, well, I think it was September of 2020. And the issue raised in that email was the issue of maintenance of vacant lots. and the problem that our current ordinance doesn't extend to that and doesn't cover it in our definitions. And the constituents were hopeful that we could broaden the definition to include that. Is that something that you would be supportive of?
I think I would have to turn that over to the town attorney in regards to that language.
Okay.
I did not make the language, so.
Madam Moderator, through you to actually Representative Iacono, I'd like to maybe decide right now that we work on Blight before the end of the term, because I think that this has come up, I don't know, I think as long as I've been on the RTM, going on 6 years. So, and I know that Representative Iacono has put forward changes for a fund for this, and I think it's a great idea, and we should do that. And I've seen versions of language for that, and I know this constituent wants to look into vacant lots, and I think that there are other tweaks that can be made. So I think we could do this in a bipartisan way.
Yeah, through you, Madam Moderator, Representative Vergara. I agree. I've been trying for years to make adjustments to get that fund done. I spent a lot of time working up language and getting comparisons using other municipalities that I sent off to the other former town attorney, and that didn't really come to fruition. So perhaps we could put something together and work on that. And then, Mr. Higgins, should we work with you then as the Blight person now, since Mr. Conley's retired, or who would be our point person?
Well, I am currently the chairman of the board, so it's myself,
okay.
Sans Cleary, and I believe Mr. Conley.
Okay. All right. So maybe Representative Vergara and I will be in touch after we put together some things, and you know, if you wouldn't mind asking Tom if Tom still has the email that I sent with some language changes, maybe that could. If you could take a look at that. If not, I'll find it and send it over.
Absolutely, thank you.
I do have language that Tom Connolly sent me in November that I could send to you, Representative Iacono.
All right, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you. Representative McDermott. I'm sorry. I think it's, Representative McDermott. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Higgins. There are 7 properties that were fined on this list. 4 of them have or had liens on them. 2 of those liens were paid. Are those 2 properties still blighted properties, or are those coming off the list in 2021?
Negative, sir. Those should be removed from the list as they are no longer deemed blight, and I believe those properties were turned over through sales.
Okay, and then the other 2 where we have liens of $27,000 and $60,000, those just have not been collected yet?
Correct. One was actually stopped due to the property being cleaned, and we're currently waiting still, and the other one is just currently still active, and it's still being fined.
Okay, and we have then 3 other properties that are being fined with no amount there. Have the fines just not hit yet, or what's the status of those 3 properties?
Those 3 properties, I believe, all have pending hearings as well. Let me look. Hearing.
Grassmere says hearing.
Yeah, that's an appeal hearing. The appeal hearing goes before an appeal officer or an attorney, and we just haven't had those hearings yet. We're still waiting to have the appeal hearings. And the last one, you mentioned 3. Let's see.
Well, you have Old Oaks Road is from 2018, so that must have built up quite a large amount of fines by now, I would think. Then you have Oldfield Road on 6/15/2020, and the other one is Grassmere.
Yes, Oldfield Road, I believe, was added to this erroneously. I looked at that earlier tonight, and I believe the decision in regards to that property there has been improvements, and we like to use the 3 E's, if you will: education, engineering, and then enforcement. Oldfield Road has made improvements, and I believe it was in the December meeting. Let's see, December meeting, that 118, I'm looking. Okay, here we go, 1180 Oldfield Road, that there has been some progress. There was a hatchway replaced, garage doors were repaired, glass in the shed has been replaced, some certain debris was cleaned up, and that there was a motion made that if the property had not been cleaned up within 30 days, that fines would start in January, and we have yet to actually meet in January. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Monahan? Veronica?
Hi, sorry about that.
Hi.
To you, Madam Moderator, to the Blight officer.
Yes, I can.
I was also, I actually put a complaint in today for a particular property. And I was looking at the form that one needs to complete and was a little kind of perplexed about some of the from item A through J in terms of what qualifies. And I'm hoping that when Pam, when our, sorry, I have an echo on my phone, so it's hard to hear, but I'm hoping that we can also adjust the descriptions on this form as we kind of, look more into what is blight and what is not blight, and so on and so forth. Because I found it, difficult.
Okay.
Certain things were on. I mean,
well.
when there's doors and windows that are covered over with spray paint and siding, but it doesn't fit into the multiple missing, broken, and boarded up windows in our doors. Okay. So I think it needs to be amended.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can certainly look into that. Is there also a comment section?
In the form, you mean?
Yes. If there is, you could absolutely enter anything, all the text you'd like. We will, every complaint we'll look at.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Monahan. Representative Georgiadis? Through Georgiadis, District 9. Hello. I thank you, through you, Madam Moderator, to the Blight officer. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm a District 9 representative, and there are a lot of lots down here that have been purchased by developers, and in my opinion, they are warehousing them. And some of the owners are very good at mowing the lawn and keeping up, as Representative Vergara and Representative Iacono have mentioned. There are others that do not maintain it, and it sounds like that is going to be addressed, the leveling out of the soil or the mowing of the lawn. Can you let me know? I'm not familiar. They also park their trucks on here, and they leave backhoes on these properties, and they use them as sort of a, storage facility. Would that be considered blight? I get a lot of complaints from the neighbors that they don't like this heavy machinery just sitting there, like big dump trucks sitting there for 3 months in a vacant lot next to their house.
I would have to look that up, but I don't. I would have to look it up, and I don't believe it would be considered blight, only because they are registered vehicles on property. As far as the lawn and the maintenance,
so they don't have
again,
to be registered to that property. They can just park on any property.
I'll be very honest with you. I would have to look that up as well. I apologize. I can certainly look it
Sometimes they
up.
park them there and they take their license plates off and they just leave the truck there. I guess they don't want to pay the taxes while they're not using them. So, through you, Madam Moderator, to Representative Vergara and Representative Iacono, if we could explore heavy machinery being left on vacant lots as far as the update to the ordinance, I would appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Pistilli. You're on mute. Okay, so Representative Pistilli is having trouble with sound, so she's going to be putting her questions in the chat, and I'll ask them for her. Sorry for the pause, waiting for the question. Is there any consideration for houses that are vacant? In my district, there is a house that has been vacant since 1975, and the driveway is all grown in as grass, no broken windows. Is there a remedy for that?
Yes, I believe so. We would certainly we would follow up with the complaint, look at the property, see if it falls and meets the definition of blight. I'm looking at the definition. It's one that is so damaged, decayed, dilapidated, unsanitary, unsafe. I believe there's also missing broken boards, collapsing walls, infestation of rodents and animals. So if that does fall underneath, if it's unsecured, that would also, a vacant property that's unsecured, then that becomes an issue, a liability to, a safety issue, if you will. So.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else, Representative Pistilli, or is that? No, she said thank you. Okay, thanks very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Fire Marshal Higgins? I don't see any. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
You too. Next on the agenda is the RTM receiving a report on the VERA, the Voluntary Employee Retirement Incentive Plan that we approved in December. And Representative Gerber had asked for a report after the VERA was done. So we did receive a written report, and that was in our materials. The administration is not sending anybody to answer any questions at this point. So if people do have questions or comments right now, we can briefly take those, and then you can feed me questions, and I'll ask the folks in the administration. Representative Vergara.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I wanted to check to see how many positions were affected in the assessor's office, because I just wanted to I had heard that the assessor has half his staff right now, and I just wanted to make sure he has the adequate staff to address the revaluation and also the start of senior and disabled tax relief applications starting February 1st. So just wanted to make sure he had sufficient staff for that.
Okay, I'll ask that question.
And I also didn't see any costs related to the lump sum payment. I wanted to get confirmation how much the lump sum payments ended up being. I estimated that since it's supposed to be $5,000 per employee for 4 years, that it was $340,000, but I wanted to get that confirmation because it wasn't listed in the costs.
Okay, I'll ask that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item. You can email me as usual if you have questions. Okay, thank you. Next on the item, next item on the list is the Fair TV appointment of Mark Joyella. Is Mark here? Know if he's here. Hang on a sec. Mark Joyella, are you with us? Maybe we'll table that in case he is joining us later. So we'll skip to the ethics appointment. We'll go first with Brian Cantor. Are you here, Mr. Oh, I see you. How are you, Mr. Cantor? I think you may be on mute. Can't hear you. Okay. A lot of technical issues tonight. Can't hear you still.
How's that?
Yay, we can hear you now.
Okay, good.
That's great, thank you.
Technology is not my strong suit.
Thank you for volunteering for this. Did you want to say anything before we open it up to questions people might have?
Sure. So I want to thank everybody, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM. It's been a long time since I've been before this body. It goes back to somewhere in the 90s, so it's been a long time since I've served on the RTM, and I appreciate your time. And it's certainly different than when I was on the RTM these days. I've served on several boards and commissions. The last time I was in an elected position was on the planning and zoning. I miss serving the town, but in that hiatus, since I last served in a position for the town, I've pretty much given my life to the Connecticut Bar Association, having served in the chairs of the Connecticut Bar's real estate section, having served as its immediate past chairman a couple of years ago. And so that's what I've been busy with the past many years. But I do appreciate the opportunity to serve the town again in a position in which I think utilizes my talents to the best of my ability, and that would be the Ethics Commission.
Great, thank you. Representative Parham.
I refer local attorneys on a regular basis, and I almost always refer Brian Cantor. Because I work with seniors, it's very unique, where I make sure that the attorneys I refer are very detail-oriented and excellent communicators, and I wholeheartedly express my positive feedback for Brian Cantor for this position. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Parham. Representative McCormick.
Yes, Attorney Karen McCormick. I'm an attorney as well, District 2, and I think I'm in a unique position to say that I too refer clients to Mr. Cantor, Attorney Cantor, when I'm in a situation where somebody's unrepresented and needs representation, and he's got a gentle heart and a gentle way about him, despite the fact that he is a lawyer. And oftentimes we're known to be harsh at times when we're going to battle for our clients. But I have to say that over the past several years, I've referred many clients to Attorney Cantor, and the feedback that I've gotten from those folks involved after the fact has always been wonderfully positive. I think he'll be an awesome addition to the Ethics Commission, and I wholeheartedly support his nomination.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Cantor? Well, thank you very much for coming tonight, Mr. Cantor. And,
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you for
volunteering again
consideration.
after many years of volunteering. Thank you for everything you've been doing.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Next on the list is the ethics appointment of Dana Carey. Dana, are you here? I thought I saw you before.
Yes, I am
Yeah,
here.
I see you up there. Yep. Yep.
There we go. I'm appropriately unmuted.
Would you like to say something before people ask any questions?
I've lived in Fairfield since 1995. I look forward to working on the Ethics Commission with the other members. Fairfield deserves to have an Ethics Commission that has a full body and has the opportunity to meet and work together. And I look forward to serving.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Carey? I don't see any questions. Oh, yep, Representative Gerber.
Yeah, I'd like to say I've known Dana for a very long time. I think she has the highest level of ethical standards, and I think she's the type of person that ensures that what needs to get done will get done. And if there's an issue, I think she would be the type of person to follow through and make sure it's resolved. Thanks, Dana, for volunteering.
Thank you, Bill.
Representative Iacono.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I actually would like to echo what Representative Gerber said, and I've known Mrs. Carey and the Carey family for a long time. The Careys go way back in Fairfield, many of whom have volunteered their personal time for public service, going back to Carl Carey, Tim himself, Dana. So I really thank Dana for stepping up to continue on with the Carey family tradition of looking out for all of Fairfield and volunteering herself to go on the Ethics Commission. So thank you.
Okay, any other comments? I think not. So thank you for coming tonight, Ms. Carey, and for volunteering. We appreciate it.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks. Next item is SPBC appointment, Steve Kornutik. I'm probably saying that wrong. How are you? I think you're on mute. You're muted, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Do you want to just briefly say anything about this appointment? Or?
Yeah, I look forward to getting to work with the committee. It'll be my first time volunteering in the town. I was born and raised here, so it's a great time to give back, and I look forward to being involved.
Thank you. That's great. Any questions for, how do you pronounce your name? I'm sorry.
Kornutik.
Kornutik. Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kornutik? I don't think so. Thank you so much for volunteering and for coming tonight to speak with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you. Have a good night.
As well.
Okay. Next item is the sale of 216 Riverside Drive. Mr. Wendt.
Good evening. Can you hear me, Madam Moderator?
Yes. How are you tonight?
Good. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Wendt. I'm the planning director for the town of Fairfield. The subject parcel to this sale is a wedged-shaped piece of land. It's approximately 5,300 square feet in size. It's not large enough by itself to be a building lot. The town acquired this parcel through a tax foreclosure back in the 50s. The adjacent lot owner, the adjacent owner of 196 Riverside Drive is the intended buyer after a public bidding process. The buyer's existing property is non-conforming to our zoning regulations at just over 9,000 square feet. This additional area will make that lot a conforming lot. The adjacent lot owner on the other side of this subject property at 224 Riverside Drive is aware of this proposed sale and supports the buyer's potential future plan to construct a garage as part of this larger parcel. Back on the 8th of December, the Plan and Zoning Commission unanimously voted to recommend the sale of this lot. Firstly, because, as I mentioned before, it will make this parcel at 196 a conforming lot, which it's not presently. And number two, the commission did not foresee any practical future use of this small piece of property. That's all I have, Madam Moderator, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Wendt on this item? Representative Garskoff.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Moderator, Madam Moderator, sorry, long day. Through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Wendt, which is what I was trying to get to. So I think we have a fund for open space purchases, and so would this money go into that fund, the money we earn from this?
I don't know the answer to that. I think when this came up during the Board of Selectmen, that question came up, and I believe Attorney Baldwin at that time responded that the money would go into the general fund, but that is not certainly up to me. I think that would be up to ultimately the either the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance or to this body as to where that prospective revenue should be placed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Through you, Madam Moderator. My question is about the bidding process that you mentioned. It's my understanding that there was a meeting that made the bidding process be only of one person. Is that the case? And can you discuss how the price was determined? Because I feel as if there's a value there seems greater than the price of the property. Thank you.
Okay. I can go back to, I think it was October or November of last year, where the town was approached by the prospective bidder, who is the adjacent property, to discuss whether the town would have any interest in selling this property. There was a meeting, we had a WebEx meeting that myself, the First Selectwoman's office, and Brian Carey at the time was present with all of the abutting owners. There are 4, I believe, abutting owners. All were on the call and all supported the prospective sale of the property. An appraisal was acquired, and that, I guess, set the minimum bid. When it went out to bid, there was only ultimately one bidder, but it was out, was advertised to public bid, so anybody could have bid on the property. There was only one bidder, which is the adjacent owner.
And they all discussed that he would be the single owner, so it was not to drive the price up, because I believe the previous value was 40,000 higher, something around that. Is that true?
I don't know if there was a previous value. I don't have any information as to whether.
I think it was $63,000 or something closer to that.
I haven't seen. The only appraisal that I've seen is the one that's in your packet. So I don't have any information as to whether there was any prior discussion about that. I don't know whether the neighbors discussed this amongst themselves and no one else wanted to bid on the property. The prospective purchaser does own, borders it on the longest adjacent property line and is looking to do a detached garage. Whether or not any of the other bidders or the neighbors were either in a financial position to make a bid or just weren't interested, I don't know what the situation is.
I'm just asking because we've dealt with this with a similar piece of property on Cherry Street, and while the value of the land is not significant, it is significant in how it will impact the value of the adjacent property. And since he has a non-conforming lot, I just was asking for your opinion onto whether you thought that this, if considering not just the property, but the property in its specific location should be valued higher.
Well, again, I'm not an appraiser, but it's only a 5,300 square foot piece that the town has owned for quite some time. It's been basically maintained by the neighbors for all that time. So, the town did acquire an independent appraisal of the property, and the purchase price is consistent with that appraisal. So I can't speak to any other valuation. This differs, in my opinion, from the Cherry Street matter, and that is a town road which the town can either abandon or keep. This is an actual parcel that the town owns, and we don't see any future need for town use of it. So this sale would get it back on the tax rolls, and it's a fairly modest price for a fairly modest piece of property, but it would certainly increase the value of the adjacent property, and that I would assume be reflected in its next assessment upon its acquisition, if it were to be sold.
And that assessment would be in a 5-year period.
The
new assessment.
Well, again, if somebody if the owner of 216 or 196 Riverside acquires this and appends it to their property, I would imagine that the value would be updated at the time of that sale rather than waiting another 5 years, since they're adding square footage to their parcel.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Vergara.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Hi, Mr. Wendt. I have similar concerns as Representative Georgiadis. I do think that this is undervalued and that it was bid very low. I know that just for myself, I live in the area. This is in my district, and I have contemplated purchasing a piece of property from my neighbor, and it's 500 square feet. And I wouldn't even consider offering my neighbor under $15,000 for that 500 square feet. I would consider it unneighborly to offer something like that, because it seems just totally unfair and out of market. And I do think it's relevant how the land will be used by either of the abutting property holders. If they don't have garages right now, and they were able to put garages in because of the addition of this land, it is a big increase in value to their properties. So I really do have this sense that the $22,000 is way undervalued, and that the taxpayer is not getting as much as they could from this sale. So that's concerning to me. I mean, like, it's $4 per square foot. That's what it breaks out into, and it seems quite low. And then you also are opening up, like Representative Georgiadis said, the very real possibility that there will be more building. And we also know that one of the abutting neighbors is already encroaching into the property. So we're kind of working into our way of a possible adverse possession situation. So was there a bottom bid? Was there a number given that the bid couldn't go under?
Again, I wasn't involved in establishing the value. That was done through an appraisal that was commissioned by the town, but I believe in the documents that are in your report, there was a minimum bid established in the bid documents, and the one bid did satisfy that criteria.
Okay, so the minimum was set at something around $20,000. I mean, this is under even what it was appraised at. I think it was appraised at $25,000, and the assessment for the property is $88,000. So I personally would want to vote it down and have it rebid and have the base bid be put somewhere around at least $50,000. Doesn't seem like it's being valued enough.
Okay, Representative McCormick.
Through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Wendt. Question, the
Karen,
appraisal...
I'm sorry, Karen. I apologize. I
Yeah.
meant to say McDermott. Mark's, you're
She
next.
go ahead,
Okay,
Karen.
Go ahead, Karen.
I don't want to speak out of turn if...
No, go ahead.
It's fine. I'll go next. It's fine.
Just very briefly, the appraisal that was appended to the backup documents, it has been completed by a certified appraiser, correct, John Harkins?
Correct.
And the way that I'm assuming that the way that this fair market value is determined is by comparing this particular parcel to other parcels that have sold in the area. So I guess my question is it ever appropriate to have more than one appraisal done on a property and perhaps taking an average of those appraisals just in case in the situation with a unique piece of property, and this clearly is a unique piece of property, maybe there's a way to have a second appraisal done just to make sure that we're on the money on the mark with the value. And then the other question that I had very briefly was, I know that in the backup documents, it seemed to suggest that there aren't any other uses that the town can foresee for this particular piece of property. Is that because of its size, that it's not conducive to creating, let's say, some kind of an open space or park area for somebody to go and enjoy the outdoors there? Is it not large enough for that purpose?
Yeah, that would be my opinion, but that's if you look at the material that was prepared back, the 14-point report that Brian Carey had prepared back on November 12th, again, it was his opinion as well that the piece by itself does not provide any value in terms of recreation. It is small. It's a very odd shape. It's skinny. It's a long, skinny wedge. And if you were to drive by it, I think you would assume that it already belongs to the adjacent neighbors and isn't a standalone parcel that's owned by the town. So, and that was, and that opinion was shared by the Plan and Zoning Commission last month when they voted to recommend. They didn't think it was a piece that had any real value for the town to maintain ownership of.
Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Through you to Mr. Wendt. I would agree with the last statements that you made about the size of the property and the shape. Mark McDermott, District 7. This property is in my district. I see some comments about dog parks, and the size of the property would not lend itself to anything more than what it's currently being bought for. My only concern, as Representative Vergara said earlier, would be encroachment on the neighbor at 224. There already is a fence along the property at 196, so you can't really tell how big. I mean, you can see it from the map that I'm looking at, and then the property basically runs back to the swampland, basically. So yeah, my only concern really would be what kind of garage, how big of a garage, from what it looks like, no more than a one-car garage could go in there. And then are they considering putting something above the garage, like an apartment that they could rent? There's a lot of other things I think that need to be looked at on top of this. Thank you, Mr. Wendt.
I don't have any details as to what exactly the prospective purchaser would build exactly, but it would have to comply with the present zoning regulations. A separate detached apartment would not presently be permitted. But again, would be speculative at this point because no plan has been forthcoming yet as to what ultimately may be built there.
Well, it's good to know that an apartment wouldn't not currently be permitted, but obviously I'm sure they could go to the town and see if they could have that zoning changed, or or permit changed, whatever they would need to do. Thank
Okay, Representative Pistilli?
Hi, Sharon Pistilli, District 3. Can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Madam Moderator, through you to Mr. Wen, and also, I don't know if it's appropriate if perhaps there are other real estate professionals who might be able to answer this question as well. But I think we're supposed to be trying to garner fair market value for this piece of property. And so fair market value isn't like what the value is to the town. But when you look at how much the properties adjacent to this are going to go up in value, you know, as we mentioned, because they could add a garage, if their property value goes up by 60 grand each, then isn't there an inherent value in this land that's greater than just as a little piece of property, but the value that it enhances the surrounding properties by our selling it? And it doesn't seem like 22.5 is anywhere near enough to reflect the actual market value, especially how hot things have been this year. So, Mr. Wen, I don't know if you can talk about, you know, like the different ways that we might come to appraise value. And then, Madam Moderator, if there are other real estate professionals who might have an answer, I don't know how to ask, you know, through another representative.
Okay. Mr. Wen, response?
Yeah, the only response I have is, first of all, like I said before, I am not a real estate appraiser, so I'll leave that judgment to those that are, but I think it is fair to say that this piece likely has more value to an abutting property owner than it does to anybody else. So what that means as far as fair market value, I mean, you know, fair market value on the open market is a certain price, but certainly there's likely to have more value to an adjacent owner than to any other independent purchaser. But having said that, as I stated earlier, I'm not a real estate professional nor an appraiser, so I'll leave the opinion of value to others.
Okay. I don't know if anyone wants, any of our members, Representative, before I go to you, Representative Georgiades, Representative Pistilli asked if any members are realtors and have a comment on that. I don't know if anybody wants to volunteer. I know we do have a few realtors on the RTM.
Madam Moderator, point of order.
Yeah.
I just want to offer up, we're under contract. This was a negotiation. I don't think it's wise for any of us to be commenting on any of that type of stuff in a public meeting. So individual realtors might have their opinions about how that all works, but I'm just going to offer a word of caution that we ought to be careful about what we're chiming in here, since this is a contract that's been negotiating and trying to get signed. The town attorney's not on the call anymore. I'm just getting a little bit nervous about where the conversation's going.
Because of asking for realtors' input? Is that why? Or
they are not on contract. They're not the realtors in play here. I just think we're walking a fine line.
Okay, I see that point.
If anyone's free to comment, I'm just offering that up as food for thought.
Okay. Nobody has stepped up anyway. Oh, actually, well, let me go back to Representative Georgiades. You're next.
So it's my understanding, through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Wen, it's my understanding that this was used, the sales approach was used this, and if the question is, if it has a maximum value to the adjacent neighbor, then a bidding process is not going to determine the fair market value because it has the most value to only one person, that is the adjacent property owner. And so I would question, and I'm not sure who I should direct this question to, Madam Moderator, but it's interesting to me that a bidding process won't give us the best price, and a sale, you know, to compare it to another piece of property that's in a different neighborhood in town will not give us a fair market value for the land. And as someone whose taxes just went up 13%, when the majority of that is the value of the land in this area, I do question the process by which this price was determined, and don't believe it's fair market value, but I'm not sure how, if, as Representative Iacona said, if it's too late, but the process needs to be examined. Thank you.
Representative McCormick, I think you had another comment.
Yes, through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Wendt and District 2, Karen McCormick. I think the bottom line here is that sounds to me like people are questioning the appraised value. And I go back to my original comment, which was, if there is a question about the appraised value, perhaps we could pursue some additional information to back up the proposed sale price. I think there is something to be said for the value of something is how much somebody is willing to pay for it. And just because it might add value to an adjoining neighbor or an abutting neighbor's property doesn't mean that they're going to pay what the town believes the additional value to their property, what the acquisition will create in terms of additional value to their property. It's really a matter of, you've got a limited supply of buyers, and certainly they seem to be most motivated of all the people in town to want to buy it, but it just seems to me like people are questioning the appraisal because that became the basis for the bidding process. And if that's the case, then perhaps there can be something done to just back that up and make sure that the contracted price is in fact the highest fair market value that we should all be considering. I guess the question is the appraisal that was done something that the body is willing to put their faith in to make sure we're getting the maximum price? So that's just my comment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Wendt on this item? That was probably a lot more than you expected, Mr. Wendt, right? Thanks very much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. The next item is the license and access agreement. Mr. Barnhart.
Good evening, Madam Moderator, members of the RTM. Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. Presenting for your consideration a proposed amendment to the lease, license, and access agreement that this body and town entered into with Cleveland Properties, doing business as Fairfield Community Theater, Inc., LLC, rather, about a year and a half ago as part of the efforts to redevelop the building that in which the community theater is located. The intent of the change is really to increase the leasehold area to accommodate a new restaurant tenant to occupy the space that was formerly used by, or leased by number 299, a retail tenant. It's proposed to be a restaurant tenant, which still requires consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission. But in addition to that, to increase the area of the outdoor patio space that's currently being used by Old Post Tavern. So that's really the intent behind it. All the other terms and conditions are essentially the same as what was agreed to by the town 2 years ago. We did increase the lease rate to measure it with the increase in the square footage. This was presented to the Board of Selectmen and approved by them, forwarded to you for your consideration. In addition to that, it was referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission under Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes. They did consider it at their meeting last week. They did unanimously favorably recommend it to you for your consideration. However, they did note that the current outdoor dining area or outdoor dining season is different than the term that is referenced in the lease amendment, and so suggested that we make one change to make that consistent with the current outdoor dining season, which is April 1 through October 31st. So that is acceptable to the lessee, Cleveland Properties, and I would suggest that we make that one change as part of the amendment that you're considering this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Barnhart? Mark, I actually had a question. I couldn't tell from the picture of the area how it will look if this is approved, how wide the sidewalk will be going around the corner there, because I've heard from a few people that sometimes it's a little narrow compared to like the other sidewalks on Post Road. Will it be any more narrow than the original plan? It looked a little different, but I can tell.
I don't believe there's any change to the sidewalk that abuts the width of the sidewalk that abuts both Umpqua and Post Road. There are some narrowing of the access points leading into the plaza area in front of the community theater itself, obviously to accommodate the outdoor dining patio area, which is expanded. But there will be pedestrian access points to allow for pedestrian access to that plaza.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I don't see anything. Representative Tallman. Peter, are you there?
Hi, Mark. Peter Tallman, District 8.
Hi.
Is the new restaurant going to be on the opposite side of the community?
Yes, there'll be
Post
restaurants
Tavern?
flanking. There'll be restaurants actually flanking both sides of the theater. So one, obviously, if you're looking at the theater to the left is the old Post Tavern, which it will remain, and then to the right will be a new restaurant, assuming they get approved by planning and zoning.
And how does Old Post Tavern feel about that?
Well, you know, competition's a beautiful thing, but I'm sure, you know, they probably, if they had their druthers, they would prefer not to have another restaurant so close by. But
and what's there now? I forget.
A lot of good restaurants in town.
What's there now? I forget.
There was a retail tenant in that space, number
bookstore?
289, and they relocated to Reef Road.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Representative O'Shea.
Hey, Mr. Barnhart, I have a question. I'm looking at the rent schedule, and it's Amendment Exhibit B. And why does the rent that the square footage that they're paying rent on, why is that reduced to $850 for the off season, whereas it wasn't reduced prior to this expansion?
Let me see if I can find the Exhibit B that you're referring to. And of course, I had it right here. So currently what happens is there is contemplated a expansion of the outdoor dining area in season, which is temporary. Currently, the old Post Tavern they had the kind of that patio space that was encapsulated by a stone wall, and that was both available for their use in season, obviously for outdoor dining, and then outside of that, the winter term, they essentially had some limited use of it for folks that wanted to go outside, maybe have a drink or smoke or things like that outside the premises. So there was this contemplated summer term and winter term and corresponding rates associated with that. Now, as part of this revision, there is a permanent, more or less permanent patio space, which is reflected in that 850 square feet between the two. And then there is, during the season, there'll be some additional tables put out, similar to what's happening now. I think the pandemic has shown a lot of us that there's some possibility for restaurants to take more advantage of outdoor dining opportunities, and the public really likes that. So during the winter time, those areas will be removed and essentially be left with the space that's much smaller closer into the restaurant for that overflow, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. And another question I have is, it appears from Exhibit A that the interior square footage of the patronage space of the new restaurant is about 400 square feet. Now, with their then they want to add 640 square feet outside. I was wondering if the town had any restrictions on the amount of outside space you can add in relation to how much inside space that you have.
Well, typically how they regulate both the indoor patron floor area and the outdoor dining area is in terms of parking. It obviously has a parking implication. So they'll have to make that argument before TP&Z. You do get 150 square feet currently under our regs, 150 square feet of outdoor dining space free without any need to create additional parking for your patrons. I think, it's safe to assume that the commission may consider changing that in light of the experience we've had during this pandemic. And they may also have a sufficient number of parking spaces essentially grandfathered, if you will, because theater itself had parking associated with that use, and the seating capacity of theater is much reduced. There may be some additional parking that is credited to that use or that property that the restaurant may be able to make use of. But in either event, they'll have to make that argument to planning and zoning and show that they have sufficient parking on site or through other arrangements to accommodate the use that's being contemplated.
So they would need a parking variance.
They may need a parking variance. I don't know that for sure, but it's not uncommon for restaurants in particular in a downtown area to need a variance for parking. They may be okay. I haven't reviewed their parking numbers or talked to Mr. Wendt concerning that, because the prior theater use had a significant number of parking spaces credited to that based on the seating capacity of the theater at the time, which my understanding is that the new theater will have a much smaller seating capacity than what was there previously. If that makes sense.
Yes, but we don't know that.
I don't know that for sure, but
parking analysis compared to what the restaurant's going to need.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if that analysis has been done, or I don't believe they've made the application yet to planning and zoning. Although obviously the commission does know it's coming because they reviewed this proposed lease, the intent of which was to accommodate a restaurant on 824. So, but they'll have to decide. They'll have to make that argument to planning and zoning.
Okay, and I do have one more question. Is there it seems like most of the restaurants in town lease their sidewalk space directly from the town, whereas in this case you have the landlord leasing it from the town, and then seemingly they can charge the tenant, they can upcharge the cost of the outside space to the tenants. Are you aware of the terms of the actual outside space leases with the tenants?
My understanding and this is just based on my conversation with the existing tenant there, is it's a pass-through to Old Post Tavern. At the time, Cleveland Properties had assumed the lease license agreement from Old Post with the intent of, furthering the redevelopment of the theater property and making improvements to that space. I suppose theoretically it would be possible, but I think there's probably a limit to that. We don't have too many restaurants in town that do have to lease space directly from the town for town property, although obviously you did review earlier the report from the town attorney on that. So there are some examples of that. And yes, you're right. Most in the other instances I'm aware of, it's typically between the restaurant operator and the town itself.
Is there any way that we could assure that this, that the rent is not marked up to the tenants? That it is a pass-through?
I'll defer to the town attorney on that, or take that up with. I mean, it's my understanding that that is the case, but I don't know if there's things that we can do to guarantee that. I'm sure that there are things that we can do, but I don't have them right off the top of my head.
Okay, and one more quick question. This lease modification says that the rental amount will change as of July 1st, but they'll be using a significant additional space outside starting April 1st. So should the rental amount for that space commence April 1st?
I noticed that too. And, again, my intent when I was approached initially with this was, can we accommodate the new restaurant going in? And Old Post at the time said, we really like the additional outdoor dining space. If you're going to do that, can we have, essentially the space that we've been using during this pandemic? And other than that, we thought, well, make it easy. We'll just simply modify the leasehold area, because that's really what we're all about. But there are a couple of these things, as was noted by planning and zoning, which apparently when we entered into this originally with Old Post, the outdoor dining season was May through October, and now it's April through October. So we're addressing that. But I noticed the same thing, that the current lease that we agreed to not more than a year and a half, like a year and a half ago, provided for an adjustment to the lease rate mid-season, in July. So again, it was my intent thinking, let's only change what we need to, since this was something that was recently reviewed and considered and approved by this body and other bodies. So we just wanted to make that change. But I did note the same thing you did, which is, we have an adjustment in the rate as of July 1.
Okay, thanks so much. That's it for me.
Thank you. Representative Iacono.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Pam Iacono, District 8. Through you to Mr. Barnhart. Mark, you said that did you go before zoning? How did that work with you?
Yeah, well, I presented the same information in the form of a written report to planning and zoning with a copy of the lease. They obviously had reviewed this as well at the time in which, back in June 2019. But Mr. Wendt made the presentation and answered the commission's questions. But this issue did come up with regard to the summer term, and the fact that it was not consistent with our existing outdoor dining season. So, based on that comment from planning and zoning, I went back to Mr. Cleveland and asked whether or not we can make that one further change, so that at least the term, summer term and winter term referenced here therein is consistent with our current outdoor dining season, to which he agreed.
Okay. And then just piggybacking a little bit back to the parking, and if they're going to need a variance, and I just want to make sure that if that's the case and the town is advocating for this particular spot to happen, and I want to promote economic development wherever we can, I'm hoping that the town will take the position that they will advocate for other outdoor seating accommodations to be made for all of the restaurants.
Absolutely.
I know I've had conversations with Representative Vergara, and she and I both feel the same way about how vibrant the town looks with all the outdoor dining, and that's if there's anything positive to come out of these corona restrictions, that it's been so nice to walk, through town and see everybody outside. It's a very, it's a really nice feeling. So I would just like, if we're going to do for one, I would like to do for all, and, advocate for lifting those parking restrictions in that regard for all of our restaurants here in Fairfield.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're all set. Thank you so much, Mr. Barnhart, and have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for your time. Okay. And now we're going to the Safe Boat Grant, Chief Liddy and Captain Calamaras.
Hi, good evening. This is Sergeant Wilsey.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Good. I was asked to step in to speak about the grant.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, we received another grant from Department of Homeland Security under the Port Security Grant Program.
Mm-hmm.
The exact amount is $48,228. And the town of Fairfield will be responsible for $16,000, totaling $64,304. This is to upgrade the electronics package for the 33-foot safe boat. The life of the grant is over 3 years. A major portion of that money, approximately $20,000, will be put towards the updating of the electronics package ASAP, and then the rest of the money will be for normal routine maintenance over the next 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Just give it a minute to see if anything pops up. I guess not. I think we have no questions for you. Thank you very much for joining us and speaking about this today.
Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. You too. Thanks. I'm going to ask one more time if Mark Joyella is here. I don't see him in the participants, but so I think he'll come next week and speak with us. So with that, we're finished with our joint committee meeting. The phone numbers for the individual committees are on the last page of the agenda for this meeting. And also the town clerk sent us that information. So hopefully everybody has what they need. And we'll adjourn and go to those individual committee meetings, and we'll see each other next Monday for the regular RTM meeting. Thank you. Good night.